Donald Trump exposing dirt on himself in the most bizarre document dump in American history. As we always see with Donald Trump litigations, they tend to backfire in his face once people call his bluff and stand up to him. So people were very curious what Donald Trump was even going to say during the speech, or whatever the hell you want to call that national address, that the thing he did on Thursday night, which frankly looked like it should possibly be reserved for a psychiatric location. It was deeply unwell. I don't know what the hell we're even watching there. But Donald Trump is an illegal. So he's calling for people to be prosecuted. Not sure who the people are other than people who worked for him during his first term, like John Ratcliffe, who's his former director of national intelligence, now his CIA director, who would be in charge of all of these documents that Trump claims show something about Venezuela hacking or China, something like Trump couldn't complete the sentence. He literally couldn't complete sentences. He was glitching. He's like, Donald Trump is angry, right? I was like watching this thing, and I'm like, what? I don't even know. What are you trying to say here? But I guess what he was doing, he was declassifying certain records, which were in typical fashion, like as when we've been covering here, Trump talking about the Epstein files with all of the redactions, the Butler, Pennsylvania records, all of the redaction. Everything is always so heavily redacted also that it calls into question the underlying productions. But like when you actually then looked at the documents that Donald Trump produced, like they were harmful to Donald Trump. I mean, I talked about this as Lane, so I'm not going to spend that much more time here talking about this piece. But there's a piece that hasn't gotten enough attention. But, Donald Trump did not talk about the fact that Russia worked very hard in 2020 to try to, this is what the documents in my opinion are showing, that they worked very hard to try to get Donald Trump elected, and that they were working to gin up Burisma scandals and bring Hunter Biden into it, and that Russia was very much behind all of the stuff that we saw a lot of Trump's proxies were putting out there leading up, about Hunter, about Joe Biden, about Burisma. That's what a lot of these newly declassified documents show. But notably, Trump doesn't talk about that. But then when Trump did talk about China, and you look at the document on China, first off, if you visually look at it, it looks like an Epstein files document. Which I'll get to the point in a moment. Like it literally looks like an Epstein files document, but the visual of it, that it's like all redacted the same way those Epstein file documents are, which again, Todd Blanche refuses to produce unredacted Epstein files, and he doesn't give any good explanation and doesn't give a redaction or privilege log. But here we go. So as Karen Piper says, looks like China has some dirt on Trump, which Trump redacted. I wonder what it is. Here's what it says. Redacted. So this is a document leading up to the 2020 election of Trump's intelligence community, right? Trump sadly was in office in 2020. So Trump is saying his whole premise is that my intelligence community were screwing me over, and they were conspiring with foreign intelligence to screw me and help Joe Biden, which is your own people wanted Biden to win and hurt you. But then it even gets more outlandish when it's like, okay, so who are the people? Oh, John Ratcliffe? That was your director of national intelligence. He's now your CIA director. That guy? Well, he did a dissent. Okay, but he still says that there were no interference that changed the votes of the 2020 election. Marco Rubio also prepared a report talking about Russia's involvement, but also that contradicted everything that you said. That's also your Secretary of State, but I digress. There's this document right here from 2020, and it says, redacted. This is from Trump's intelligence community. We judge that China will, redacted, evaluate the implications of various electoral outcomes on its interests. If Beijing were to assess that the increasingly downward trajectory in U.S.-China relations threaten China's rise and cannot be dealt with using existing tools, it might attempt to more directly thwart the president, referring to Donald Trump, president's re-election, including by leaking information of redacted, or through online influence networks, redacted. And then the rest of this is redacted, which appears to be qualifying or explaining what they were going to be leaking about Donald Trump and what the leak was going to be. So now we have this document Why, if you were going to say you're declassifying this, what could possibly be in that redaction right there? That based on everything he said, that part needs to be redacted when your whole the whole premise of this psychotic thing you did, I guess, was to say you were declassifying that, but that's all redacted right here. I want to bring in Harry Litman from the Talking Feds YouTube channel, Talking Feds Substack, and Talking Feds podcast. Now, Harry, what a deranged and bizarre thing that even was. I had to cover it afterwards because I was watching on C-SPAN people call in and say, all right, I'm not going to watch it, but I'm getting my update from MeidasTouch. Then I felt it was so bad I didn't want to do a video on it. But then I saw people literally calling into C-SPAN saying they were going to get the update from me. I'm like, all right, I'll watch the thing for you. I'll watch it and I'll give you an update. So I watched the thing. And then I see the documents that he declassifies, and then the main ones aren't helpful to him at all. Like they're actually, thank you, I guess. They're very damaging to you, in my opinion. And then you redact this, which now raises all of the Epstein files questions, and it brings attention there. What do you make of it, Harry?
Deranged and bizarre is really right. And you got to wonder, I mean, Donald Trump is the least competent or certainly practitioner of reading that's ever been in the White House, right? He just, all memos to him have to be like a page or whatever. You really got to wonder, did he ever even read this stuff? It's got little print and redactions that, did he take the time? Or one possible explanation is he never read a thing. And now his aides, especially in this area, are so cowed by him, so completely inculcated with the idea you just got to keep serving up to the boss this false narrative that he just can't let go of about election interference and the like. So, it could just be that there was no emperor's not wearing any clothes issue. You're right. When things come out, the very best you could say is it's a wash and a nothing burger, but it wasn't. It was worse than that. First, the headline here for sure, and this is actually how the media largely covered it. They were not nearly as fawning as they've been in the past. His own intelligence community and the guy who he's brought in to run this says there is not, you mentioned, no elections were switched. There's not a documented instance of a single vote that was changed in any of the ways that he's pointing to as being so worrisome and nefarious. Not a single vote. And not to mention all the kind of audits, et cetera, that showed everything being on the up and up. So, everything he's talking about, China has some propensity to try to maybe reach out to voters and influence them. This just in, people have known that for years, and they was already the case with Russia. Interestingly, he hardly mentioned Russia at all. Or Venezuela sometimes can change votes. In Venezuela, none of it even begins to build the bare beginnings of a case from doing anything in the United States other than being assured and grateful that we have safe and valid and secure elections that you can trust. And that's why I want to say the best case scenario is that this is a nothing burger. I don't think it's the best case scenario, however, because I think it's designed to undermine the American people's confidence. People don't listen so closely or take what he says at face value. And I heard thus and so that President Trump said. So undermine people's confidence in the actual integrity of our elections. Man, that is a really kind of noxious impact. Maybe it keeps people from going out to the polls. They're all rigged anyway. Or maybe it just, makes them feel you can't actually feel security about your leaders. That's worse than nothing. That's really a net kind of cost to the democracy. And something else, Paul Krugman made this point. He said, of all the fibs, and there was nothing but fibs, really kind of, was one of these like just reheated fibs besides, not even sensational as they were supposed to be, just old hat, shop worn fibs that he's done again and again. The biggest one, says Krugman, is the idea that the U.S. is now valued more highly within the world than at any other time. Because, it's manifestly, transparently false. And just take a step back. People in Europe, around the world, care about what the president of the United States says and does. And here is this joker, this buffoon, going on national TV. I doubt it was run live in Europe, but still, this address where he just spouts a completely demonstrable pack of lies. What the hell happened to the United States that this clown show is really what's at the top of the whole government? So I would say the speech itself, first, nothing new. Second, the big revelation was completely cut against his whole sort of argument or thesis, which is there's never been a single vote. Only reason to have confidence in things. Third, even the supposed new stuff we've known before, but it's worse than that in terms of what it does to American voters, in terms of what it does to U.S. standing in the world. You had to watch it, Ben, and God bless you for the Midas Mighty, but others watch it and pay attention to the president of the United States, the leader of the free world, and they think we've lost our friggin' minds.
It's an understatement. I think, you watch that, but I think the broader point you make is this is outrageous. This is outlandish, but this is part of the roadmap. You create an outlandish thing that is so unfathomable. Vandals in the reflecting pool, vandals, it's the stupidest thing that you're like, what? I mean, it sounds, this stuff that he brings up. And then he says it over and over and over and over and nonstop and over and doesn't stop and floods it and doesn't care how reckless it is, and then uses it to try to bulldoze over the law, over people. And, and then for him, whether he gets his way, then he gets his way. When he doesn't, he whines. It's a rigged system, and so the device, whether it succeeds or fails, we're all the victims. We, the people, the Constitution, law, and order. And he either heads, I win. I take credit for doing this thing and pushing it through because I get people to bend to the crazy, or it fails. But I say it's rigged and it's unfair, and I aggrandize myself by attacking the system of unfairness and murky conspiracy and deep state. And I just want people to be wise to the tool, and that's what happens when you don't care about the country or the people or governance or any of it, and it's just a tool of division and destruction. Final words.
Can I add one point to that? It's so true, but once again, George Orwell is the prophet of this Trump's tenure. And they make the point that people have really studied Orwell and the different authoritarian governments that obviously are attacking facts one after another. It needn't be the goal for them to succeed in certain ways that they persuade people that, in fact, all these demonstrably false things are true. The idea is to foment chaos and undermine the very idea of truth. Have people just in the middle of the country say, Trump says this, Dr. Fauci says that. I don't know. It's all they create a kind of chasm of the truth for starters. And at that point, once you have that chaos, a unscrupulous government can just, drive a tank through. So it's enough to just shake up everyone's faith in the very idea of true things being out there to really advance the kind of Orwellian authoritarian agenda.
And I would say this, Orwell deserves a lot of credit, but more than a prophet, he was a historian. The authoritarian mindset is a mindset of malignant narcissism, of disinfo, and these tactics. And I think that Orwell looked in history, saw how authoritarians behaved, and envisioned what a future world can look like when you meld that with technologies and other things that were being discussed and kind of talked about then. But it is the history of humankind is actually more frequently the history of authoritarians behaving this way. The experiment of enlightened democracies in the 18th century, that type of thinking, liberal democracies, and that being on the rise, if you took a historical perspective, is the tiniest little blip. And that was actually what was hopefully in a post, I'm not trying to make everything was great.
No, it's true. The American experiment, right? Yeah.
And so anyway, I plugged that because that's what I talk about, Harry. WTF America.
Oh, what's that book again? Let me see that.
It's called WTF America.
Wherever did you get that, Ben?
I wrote it. It comes out October. It comes out October, Harry. And I'm going to bully my way into your event in San Diego, and I'm going to speak with the people out there as part of the book tour. But more importantly than you getting my book, everybody, but pre-order it now. Harry's YouTube channel, Talking Feds. Search Talking Feds, subscribe now, and in the comments to Harry, say, Harry, Ben wanted me to tell you that we did a pre-order of WTF America. Thanks,
Or you can just say WTF. I'll get the point.
Put WTF in Harry's comments and he'll know what's in. All right, thanks, everybody.
See you later. Thanks, Ben.
Breaking news right now. My brothers and I wrote a book. It's called WTF America. And well, doesn't that just say it all? It comes out officially this October, but you can pre-order your copy today. Just scan the QR code or click the link in the description below.